warmly welcome you, all of you. And I wouldn't want to introduce the author just now because Gurdeep wants to do this honor. Uh, so, Brewing Knowledge Fridays is a platform where we offer a place where readers, learners come together. And it's an important platform because this is where we build the essence of our foundation: reading, relationships, and even more important, reflection in these times. And when we're all coming here together, we read a book from first page onwards till the last page. And the readers are here joining us, sometimes not able to join us on a certain day. They can always watch the recordings and ask us questions. And some of these engaging conversations that happens during the sessions help us rebuild relationships, help us reflect over certain things that the book brings us forth with. So I wouldn't want to take up a lot of time because we have a lot of readers who have asked questions and a lot of teachers who have asked us questions. So Gurdeep, please.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much, Neelashi. And once again, good evening, everyone. And very warm welcome to this special meet and greet session with Professor Manu Kapur. And on behalf of Good School Alliance, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Mr. Kapur. Mr. Kapur is currently the director of Singapore ETH Center and professor of learning sciences and higher education at ETH Zurich, where he also directs the Future Learning Initiative. And before this, he served as a professor of psychological studies at the Education University of Hong Kong and held key leadership roles at National Institute of Education, Singapore. Sir, we are deeply honored to have you with us today. Thank you so much for taking out time for all of us. Before we begin our conversation, we would love to hear your journey in your own words, the experiences and turning points that shaped your work in learning sciences and especially this productive failure, the concept of productive failure.
Thank you, Gurdeep, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for spending time with my book, reading it, and engaging with the ideas, and also now this opportunity to, share thoughts and questions and interact around those ideas. So, as you probably read in the book, I was born in India, in Lucknow. Um, Studied until I think it was 10th grade. Yeah, until the 10th grade in India. And then I moved to Singapore to play football, also study. And many things happened. Eventually, I went into teaching, and I taught mathematics for a while. And it was at that point in time that I really got interested in mathematical cognition. How does the human mind encode abstract mathematical concepts? And that led me to a master's and a PhD. And during my PhD was the other epiphany where I realized first the problem of learning itself, which is the problem of learning was not that that we learned poorly from bad instruction. The problem of learning was that we learned poorly from very good instruction. And that led me down into the cognitive sciences and brain behavior. And that's when the initial ideas of productive failure started to come into fold. That perhaps the first point or the first step in learning something new is not to be told what that is. It's a very counterintuitive idea. Imagine 25 years ago or 22 years ago when I was just a graduate student, for me to say something or propose something like that was, against, like I was basically committing a suicide, academic suicide, to even say something like that. But then, we slowly started to run a couple of proof of concepts and experiment, and the initial data was superb. But it still took about 2 years to publish, to get it through the scientific journals. I was almost not sure whether I'm cut out for academia because it took so long. But then, sometimes when you completely change a particular theoretical architecture, science doesn't change so easily, right? So it really seeks a lot of evidence, a lot of high quality evidence before you can start to question the dominant paradigm. Yeah, so like I said, today people are talking about failure and it seems all very nice and intuitive and everybody's jumping on it. 25 years ago, it was not the case. But it's been quite a journey. So I'll stop there.
And that's very inspiring journey, and I think that is your productive failure story, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well said. Yes, exactly.
Okay, so to begin with, I would like to begin with the core idea of productive failure. Like
Mm,
you mentioned in your book, that problem solving or struggle or failure before direct instruction leads to
mm,
deeper understanding, conceptual wise, and transfer of learning happens when there
mm.
is a struggle before the instruction.
Right.
But in reality, teachers are, even today, even when we go to our classes, we are so used to giving the method upfront. We go and we give the instruction. Whereas productive failure asks us to delay that instruction so that students can think first.
Yeah.
So, in your view, what mindset shift do teachers need to make to move
Mm,
from this familiarity of like for teach first model to this idea of letting students try, think, and even struggle for
mm.
a while before instruction? So, what is your viewpoint on that? What kind of mindset shift is required?
I mean, to the extent that teachers use or are familiar with the latest science of human learning and the ideas that are coming out of the body of research and willing to take that science and apply it. So, for example, I mean, in medicine, for example, if you have the latest medicines, and nobody would say, "Well, I'm not going to use it because I'm used to another kind." From, I've used this for ages. My parents have used this, grandparents. I'm not going to use latest medicine. That never happens. But for some reason, in education, it does. But I think, in my experience, most teachers, when they see the evidence and the findings behind it, they do start to question it. Again, it's now we live in a time where more and more people are finding it. Yeah, maybe we should go more of the productive failure route than the direct instruction route. But it's taken a lot of years to to come to this point. Um, I try to give teachers the gardening or farmer's analogy. Direct instruction is like, the rains are going to come and you just throw the seeds willy-nilly. Okay.
Okay.
All productive failure says is, well, maybe you want to fertilize the ground, till it properly, sow the seeds in a particular structured way, and then let the rains come. So it's about preparing. It's the same idea. In the second case, the crop would be much better. Well, the same rain would give you a better crop than the first case, right? And that's what productive failure also does. It's preparing the mind through this failure-based activation protocol, and then saying you still get to teach, but you derive a bigger bang for the buck. And if people can start to see this, shift in mindsets, shift in, say, using metaphors to make that shift, then I think it can be quite helpful.
Wow, that's an interesting analogy. I would say the seeds and the medicine one. So, like building on that, for productive failure to actually work in the classroom, you have
Mm.
mentioned in your book that certain conditions need to be in place,
Yeah.
maybe related to prior knowledge and how, as a teacher, we are designing the task, whether it is challenging or not. And then there is a need for strong assembly or consolidation phase.
Mm.
So, in your view, what are the essential conditions must be in place for PF to actually succeed in the class, like
Mm.
implementation wise?
In terms of what? In terms of design or teacher
In
capacity?
terms of designs as well, and in terms of teacher capacity as well. So, like if I'm going to my class, what kind of pre-preparation is required so that productive failure is successful in the class when we are
Yeah.
implementing this concept in the class?
Right. So to me, that's a question of design, and capability is tied to the capability of being able to design. And so in productive failure, the philosophy is, or the design framework views constructs like motivation, prior knowledge, as not constructs that are attributable to the individual. We are used to saying this student has more knowledge than the other. This student is more curious than the other. This student is more motivated than the other. It is very intuitive to assign these constructs to individuals. Whereas if you take a design perspective, then you start to say, well, motivation is a function of is an interaction between the individual and the design and the environment. Now, as a teacher, you have control over the design. So when teachers say, well, this person has less knowledge than others, I come out and say, well, if you design it in a way that even the lower knowledge learner can generate some ideas because the problem is designed in that way, then that's a good productive failure design. And that's what we find, that even students who have very low mathematical knowledge, they benefit from productive failure because we've taken their intuitive ideas, their intuitive understandings, informal ways of thinking and reasoning into the design process so that the problem actually invites that knowledge, sort of punctuates that knowledge and invites that knowledge into learning. And once they build up those resources, then they can use those resources to learn, make sense of the same instruction, right? The same thing happens with motivation, right? So when you feel that your ideas, that you can actually take action, and with your intuitive ideas, you can try to solve some problems, even if they're not correct, that action itself drives the motivation. A lot of times, again, motivation theory used to say, or at least in the past, the idea was motivation drives action.
Yes.
Right. So if you don't see action from a student, you say they're not motivated. But
I think it's vice versa. Yeah. Yeah.
action is something you can design for. So the same unmotivated, low knowledge learner in mathematics, if you give them a problem that is designed to activate their own intuitions, then they act on it. And that action then drives motivation because you feel you've got something to be able to do. And so we really need to start thinking of how the environment needs to be designed in a way that drives knowledge production, drives motivation, rather than, the historical ways of thinking of them as these are simply properties of individuals.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Like this theory that action drives motivation rather than motivation drives action. Totally agree. Now, like that, you have explained with a lot of clarity and a lot to reflect upon how we should design the whole system so that the productive failure works in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And then you talked about like the processes inside the learner's mind, and you have explained this through 4 A's that you have mentioned in your book:
Mm-hmm.
activation, awareness, affect, and assembly.
Mm-hmm.
So, among these 4 A's, which part do you think the students as well as teachers struggle with the most, and why?
Um,
Out of 4 A's.
so struggle, I'm not sure whether from the learner standpoint, if the design is well calibrated, activation would happen effortlessly, and they will become aware of their knowledge gaps. And this will drive affect, both positive and negative, right? So, in other words, you have prepared the field quite effortlessly, right? The challenge is, again, on the design of the teacher. How do you design it in a way that you get activation from students, knowledge activation from students? Because once that happens, the gap becomes obvious because it's a failure-driven protocol, right? So if I'm activating your knowledge in a way that makes you fail at solving the problem, not only have I activated what is relevant for learning the new thing, I've also in the process shown you that that thing doesn't work. So you automatically realize that there's a gap, and then you want to bridge that gap, and that builds motivation and engagement and interest. So the affect part. So the teacher's focus is squarely on the activation protocol, which is the hardest part to do. And if you do that well, it's half the problem solved. The other part that's very hard for teachers is the assembly. Because in assembly, we are looking at, and I think in the book, I give a Lego block metaphor for, so when a student comes up and has a particular idea about something, and from an expert standpoint, you may say, oh, that idea is wrong. It doesn't work. Things are not exactly like that. Let me tell you how things are, right? So there could be one way of instruction in productive failure where you say, yeah, all of you, I see that you've generated 5, 6, 7 different ideas. Excellent work. Good job. They're all wrong. Let me show you what the correct one is. That's one way of doing it, right? But that's not consolidation. That's not assembly. That's just telling. Assembly is the process, and this is why it's difficult, is to take students' idea, deconstruct them into components, and say, while your overall assembly of your solution is incorrect, there are some components in that assembly that are actually very useful. Let me take those Lego blocks out and from another solution. And this is a very hard thing to do for teachers, is to look at the components of the Lego blocks in students' assemblies of solutions that are incorrect, and then use them to build a new assembly and show them the canonical form. That is consolidation. That is good instruction. And that is still better than, if you do that, that is still better than direct instruction. So activation and assembly, to answer succinctly, are the two big challenges.
Yeah. So totally agree, design is very, very important. Then only everything will go effortlessly. But there is one, I'm talking from teacher's point of view, in the exam-driven system and marks-oriented system. How can teachers design complex, open-ended tasks without overwhelming students? These days, students are very pressurized. They are sitting for competitive examination and a lot of syllabus to cover, and time is very limited. We always have time crunch, whether it's students or teachers.
Yeah.
So designing a task, a good task, that is a task for the teachers.
Yeah. So look, how should I address this? Time is one input variable. The efficiency of an intervention or any system is, I'm an engineer by training, so it's output over input. Right? So if you increase the input and if the output is disproportionately better, then that input is still justified. Right? So in productive failure, you get 3 times the effects on deep learning and transfer. Now, the question then becomes, is that output valued? Or the output of rote learning is enough because that helps you do well in exams and all the basic stuff, right? So that's a question that teachers have to answer themselves. It's not for me to tell you that this should be your value. If you think the standardized test assessments are what you give, you don't, and I've said that in my talks as well, you don't have to do productive failure at all. Yeah. But once you commit to deep understanding as the goal, that is what values. Once you're understanding that transfer capabilities have to be built, creative, flexible thinking has to be built, then you clearly recognize that what you're currently doing, is not working. So what if you can do it in a short amount of time? What's the point of doing something in a short amount of time and it still does not give you the output that you really, really want, if you're intellectually honest with yourself? Right. So that's the conversation, and there's no judgment of any sort whatsoever as to where you place yourself. So that's kind of the first point that everyone has to think about. Yes, and design would still be hard, but there are 2 things that happen. One, there are economies of scale over time. So the first 2 or 3 iterations are going to be hard and time consuming. But after that, it becomes easier in the process. So you really want to have a long-term commitment to this. And like me, everyone who does this will go through their own productive failures because that's how it is done, right? But in over 3 to 5 years, that's where the economies of scale start to kick in. Not just in terms of you getting better at design, but also you're starting to build a culture in the school, in your classroom, in the school, that also starts to have a positive effect on student learning and outcomes. So that's one point. Second, teachers, like, look at us, look at this community, beautiful community that you've built. I don't know how many people are there in this 32, right? 32 expert teachers. Now imagine all of you get together and say, I'm going to take a stab at a few topics. And you divvy up the whole curriculum, and you do that for a year or so. And collectively, you as a community would then be able to design, implement, critique, refine, go through 2 or 3 cycles like that. And lo and behold, you have a fantastic curriculum that people can pick from. So think long term, think community, build communities, which is, I think, what you're trying to do. So
I think as educator, we have to change our mindset. Like we should come out of our comfort zone and growth mindset is required.
yeah. And
As
again, here, Gurdeep, may I say, it's mindset is like motivation. You
yes,
don't change mindset and then act. You just act, and then you see the benefits, and your mindset starts to change. So sometimes you just have to act. Just take the first step and act.
I think this is our first step only that we all are together here. This is the first step that we have already taken, and we have already read the book. And
Yeah,
that was the first step. And all thanks to
exactly.
Sandeep sir for this, to be very honest. He encouraged us to read.
Exactly. Exactly. That's very good.
But as we reflect on this more deeply, we realize that productive failure cannot remain only a classroom level practice and it's not
Mm,
a visual thing. Even the best designed task, even the teachers are motivated that they want to design the task, but the overall school ecosystem is required to encourage that kind of curiosity,
mm,
exploration, or
mm,
comfort with initial struggle.
mhm,
So now that brings me into a broader question about school culture. You just talked about school culture.
mm,
So what strategies for a school leader would you recommend to embed this productive failure into overall culture, not just isolated lessons?
mm, mm. I think it depends on your change management strategies as well. Um, I've worked with school principals who want to do a whole school transformation. And train and build capacity of every teacher. And I've also worked with schools that say, no, let's build pockets of innovations inside, gather evidence, and try to convince people and slowly bring them into the fold. So the different strategies by which schools and school principals, depending on their inclinations as to how you want to change school cultures, have done. I tend to prefer more of the pockets of innovation kinds of, so that you create the groundswell, and from that you let other teachers convince their peers, and more people come on board, and so on and so forth. And I'm quite comfortable if some people don't want to either. I think it's healthy for the system to have some critics inside the same culture. So that to me is a good thing. But yeah, I think it really depends on your change management strategy, and it's not rocket science. This culture building has been studied for a very long time.
Okay, thank you. Now, I would like to turn to a question that has become increasingly relevant in our classrooms today,
Mm.
uh, especially with the students having instant access to answers through AI tools these days. We have so many
Mm.
AI tools where we get the
Mm.
instant answer. So, this raises an important challenge for all of us that if answers are available instantly,
Mm.
then these days students they don't want to struggle, they don't want to explore, they don't even want to think.
Mm.
So how do we ensure that learners still experience, even we are designing, even we are designing the task, but
Mm.
these days we have AIs, and do you see AI as a tool that can support productive failure, or it will undermine it by removing the need to think, need to explore, need to struggle?
No, so AI is as good as we design it. So, I've seen AI tutors that just give the answers. In fact, 99% of the tutors that are outside, you ask them for something, they just tell you what it is. So, as a teacher and as a learner, if you know that that's not the most optimal way to learn, then you've got to do something about it, right? Um, so the question is, what do you do about it? So one is you can say, well, no AI tools allowed, because at the moment I don't have AI tools that will teach you in the right way. So it's better that you don't use the tool at all, right? So that's one way of doing it. So then students have to rely on their own cognitive resources to actually think about what they want to do. And in fact, in initial learning, that's how it should be done when you first come to understand something. Or, as we are currently developing, we can train AI models, engineer them to design learning in a productive failure way. Right? So these tutors then behave like productive failure teachers because they design the problem solving exactly to follow the productive failure principles. They design consolidation, that components and Lego block consolidation exactly like productive failure is designed for. They can personalize learning exactly in the way productive failure designs. So that again goes back to design. So as teachers, either if you're very good at this AI engineering and learning design, then you could design such things, or then you can work with scientists like myself and others who are really designing powerful AI tools in the ways that learning actually should happen. And their students will not get the answers just because they're asking for them, right? And they will get the right facilitation, consolidation to work with and the right content to work with. So there you have it. So I think you can either just say tools are not good in the initial learning, which is a very valid thing to be able to say. And by the way, we said that when calculators came out and other things came out. This is not a new conversation.
Yes.
Right? Or you can work with scientists to design really good AI tools that actually do the kind of learning that leads to deep learning. And I think conceptually, all of us also need to make a distinction between, in the context of AI tools or any tool for that matter, learning and performance. When you're in the learning zone, by definition, you don't have your current skill sets and capabilities are not that there yet. And therefore, how you build that capability, knowledge and capability, is by intentional effort. Effort is what leads to development. And in this case, it's cognitive effort. If the effort is done by the tool, then you will get high performance without learning. So any student who says that, oh, I can get the answers and my performance is high, or I don't need to write anything because AI does all the writing for me, well, that can lead to high performance. But well, mate, you have not learned anything because all the effort is done by the tool. Whereas as an expert, if you're already an accomplished writer or an accomplished designer or an engineer, if an AI tool can help you, increase your performance productively, what used to take you 5 hours now takes you 50 minutes. That is okay because you're already an expert, right? So again, using a tool should not be one thing, good or bad. For people, it's driven by expertise. It benefits people high on the expertise spectrum because they already have the expertise. And the other thing that expertise does is it can more critically evaluate the output. So whatever it is that comes out, an expert is more likely to say, okay, that's rubbish. Please, let's redo the research here. And so they can be more critical of the AI tool. Whereas a novice who's asking for writing or summarizing or calculations, they don't even have the knowledge to critically evaluate what they're getting. So it's dangerous from that standpoint. So, yeah.
And I think experts, they see the pattern,
Yeah,
and novice, they can't see the pattern.
exactly. And so they just merely get an illusion of that they're doing something amazing when in fact it's all in the tool.
Yes, yes. So if I may now bring the conversation a little closer to home, you are visiting India this December
Yeah.
for a series of dialogues and I
Yeah.
think workshops also across the country.
Yeah.
And when Sandeep sir, he shared the link, Zoom link, he mentioned Jugaad meets productive failure.
Yes.
So here we describe our learners as having a natural Jugaad spirit. Jugaad is the ability to experiment or try things out and learn by figuring things out. We are very good at that, especially the Indians. So do you see a natural connection between this mindset of trying, that is the Jugaad mindset, with the principles of productive failure?
Well, you know, for the India edition of the book, which is why I'm coming to India on this tour, I had to write a new chapter, which is at the end of the book for just the Indian audience. And the title of that chapter is Jugaad Meets Productive Failure.
Okay.
So I will keep that a suspense because let the book come out. But you're absolutely right. And that's how I was thinking about how shall I write a final chapter, an additional chapter in the book where it really connects with both what I experienced growing up in India and also what almost every Indian would be able to relate to. And if I can, you know, bootstrap that and connect it to productive failure, then perhaps as a culture you can derive more from this idea.
That's great. So we are looking forward to India edition of Productive Failure.
Yeah. The only change is the last chapter, so you don't have to read the whole book again. You can just take the last chapter.
And that day I was talking to Sandeep sir that reading once is not enough. We
Yes.
have to read this again and again in order to understand the crux of this productive
And
failure.
and and do you know why that is the case?
Yes, yes.
Because
Yeah.
reading builds
Mhm.
the reason that happens is because reading builds knowledge. And with knowledge, you're able to see more in the same reading when you go back to it.
Mhm.
It's just, and then you build more knowledge. And that's where people say that, oh, the last time I wasn't seeing this when I read
Yes.
this. It's because now you're coming back into the same tool with more knowledge, and therefore you will derive more from the same reading. So yes, read more, read double, triple times. I always love going back to my favorite books.
And then we are able to like connect the dots as well.
Yeah. The dots always connect looking back.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
So these days, I want to share that these days, Teachers Academy Masterclass, we are reading this book, Courage to be Disliked.
Mm.
That is our current reading.
Mm.
And in that book, Adlerian psychology we are studying, and he said that past experiences do not define us, and life is not a competition.
Mm.
And PF is also talking about this that learners should try, they should not like depend upon past experience. They do some experiments and they should move with the goal and learn without fear. So
Mhm.
I think both these books are somehow connected. So whenever we are reading Courage to be Disliked, some concepts of productive failure are coming to our mind when we read this book.
Mm.
So, how can teachers help students let go of that fear of being wrong so that they are
Mm.
truly engaged in this productive struggle?
Mm.
Because as a teacher also and as a student also, there is a fear of judgment always that if I'm like if I get fail in this particular exam or in some other area, I'll be judged. I'll be judged by society. I'll be judged by my friends. I'll be
Mm.
judged by my teachers. So
Yeah.
how to avoid that kind of situation? Because it's emotionally very draining
Right.
process, I would say.
So a couple of just caveats here. The failure in productive failure is not the failure that happens in exams and high stakes settings where you've built some expertise and knowledge and then you're putting it to a test, right? In a
Mhm.
competitive way or otherwise. Failure and productive failure is the failure when the stakes are very low. It's when you first come to learn something new. So the logic of productive failure is when you first come to learn something new, if we were to design a space where it's okay to fail and generate ideas, even if they don't work, and then learn the concepts, you will learn it more deeply than the traditional way, so that when failure actually matters, when the stakes are high, because you've learned it deeply, the chances of failure are reduced.
Mhm.
Okay? So you're basically using failure early in a safe, constrained way to learn deeply so that failure when it matters is reduced. So I don't want the book or any of the ideas to say all failure is okay. Not all failure is same. In addition to these two different kinds of failure, there's also failure due to laziness. Well, if you failed your exam because you were lazy, well, that's on you. That's bad. Or stupidity or incompetence or whatever, right? There's failure because of many, many reasons. That's a failure. You have to talk in a very nuanced way that that's the particular kind of failure. And therefore, one can maintain that competition. So I don't think there cannot be competition in life. It's just against biological theories of evolution. There is competition in life. The question is, how do you prepare people to survive and thrive in those landscapes, in those ecologies? It's by building capabilities in strong ways, in deep ways, in ways that really lead to deep learning and growth. And so in those contexts, if it's failure-driven learning, then it leads to those deep capabilities so that when the stakes are high, you have a better chance of succeeding. If you look at any domain experts, you don't want your surgeon to think that, if the patient dies, it's okay. Or you don't want your airline pilot to think, okay, if I crash today, that's fine. No, you want to train the surgeon when they're first learning in a way that their failure is okay. They can try, they can experiment, not on real people, by the way, but on simulations and so on and so forth, so that they build really deep expertise. So when there's a critical patient on their table, they succeed, and they cannot say, it doesn't matter. That's not the failure that we want. It's the early initial failure that we want to design for. I hope that's making the distinction clear.
Yes. One Scottish playwright thought is coming to my mind. He said, and I mentioned in the article also that I shared, that ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better.
Yeah,
So we have to prepare our children for the same, for this competitive world,
yes.
basically.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so sir, our teachers have submitted some thoughtful questions. With your permission, if I can read their questions as well, if we have.
Sure, or if they want to ask it themselves, that'll also be fine with me, obviously.
Okay. So Khushbu Srivastava from, I don't know whether Khushbu is here or not. She has shared one question, Khushbu from Sunbeam School, Sarnath. She's asking, how can parents apply the principles of productive failure at home when they support their children learning?
Yeah, so I think just adults, both teachers and parents, I think modeling is one very important aspect for a child. And if teachers and parents can both model the importance of learning from failure in this nuanced way, by the way, then I think that's it. So, for example, if your child comes home and maybe you have a conversation around, today I really messed up in something. I was trying this new thing and I just couldn't get it and I got it wrong. And, but we're trying to figure it out. It's kind of uncomfortable at work right today or these few days because we're trying to figure this really complex thing out. And we feel that we're not making any progress. Now, think about having these kinds of conversations on the dinner table at home. And if this becomes a culture, what does the child pick up? That, well, if you're not struggling, you're not learning. You're not growing, right? So and then they go to a math classroom or a science classroom and they're trying to figure a problem out and they feel, it's not coming to me. I'm not understanding. This is hard. They won't feel bad. They might say, oh yeah, I'm in the right space. Mom was also in the same space at work. So this is exactly what I am in, right? So I think it's through these modeling and failure emphasizing conversations. Because over time, kids have been socialized into exactly the schooling world where failure is not tolerated at all. You see? So we need to kind of undo that by making failure normative in the learning space without making it normative in the performance space. We all want to develop capability where we do things efficiently and effectively with low levels of failure, if at all. Right? And we need to have both these conversations. And paradoxically, the way to get there is by using failure early.
Yes, totally agree. She's asking another question. I think you have touched upon this question. She's asking, how can a teacher differentiate between productive failure and ordinary failure in a daily classroom practice?
Yeah, I don't know what ordinary failure is. It's if is the ordinary failure out of laziness and incompetence, well, then that has to be corrected. I think you have to, if the failure is in a test or an exam, well, this is the kind of failure that maybe feedback can address. You can start to understand where a child does not understand the things that led to not doing well on the exam, and then you go into corrective action and relearning and so on and so forth. And perhaps in the relearning, you can then try other methods like productive failure to relearn, right? And also then failure in the initial learning. If a child is struggling when you initially design when they initially learn something new, and if you find that the child is struggling, I think the teacher can help them say, every time I learn something new, I'm exactly feeling what you're feeling right now. And this is normal. And that's what I talk in the book about, creating a safe space for students. You have to really renorm it so that we build a generation of students who know how to, be frustrated in a productive way, who know how to be uncomfortable in a productive way, who know how to fail in a productive way. It's norming. It's not the failure itself, if you think about it. It's the balance. A person, if a child a problem, one child will struggle and try hard at it and still say, I'm having fun. You have to
Yes.
ask, where did they get that from? They're still in the same classroom. They come from similar families even. But why do some children just say, oh, I like to mess around with things, struggle and keep at it. Whereas the other child would struggle and say, maybe this is not for me. You see? Both struggled and failed, but one says, oh, I want to keep going at it. The other one says, this is a reflection on me. Right? I think that's where the renorming has to take place.
I think we all as teachers like a lot to reflect upon from
Mhm.
today's session. Next question from Aisha Bhumi from Sunbeam Bhagwanpur. So she is
Mm.
asking, PF is widely researched in STEM,
Mm.
but less in language learning. So how can
Mm.
teachers meaningfully apply PF, that is productive failure, in English literature or creative writing for critical thinking or say originality?
Yeah, I mean, look, the design framework, first of all, the you're right that it's widely applied in STEM, and the scientific evidence comes also widely from STEM fields. But the human mind does not work differently. The information processing, the cognitive system does not work differently for math or language. It's the same system. It's the same way of processing information, right? So if there are mechanisms we know that work for learning math, they're the same mechanisms that you could use for learning language. So the science is still a universal architecture, even if you get it from one domain or a few. Now, the design framework, that's why we have a design. So last two chapters of my book, of the international edition, are focused on design. So how do you design for productive failure? What goes into designing these tasks? What are the features that these tasks must have? I go deep into explaining all of that. Then how do you facilitate these tasks and how do you consolidate based on that learning? And you can apply those principles in any domain. Okay. Um, but you have to go and attempt the design. You have to go through the design process yourself, right? Ideally, if you work in small teams that brainstorm ideas, and so on. And that's the difference between science and design. Okay. The science, so for example, if you want to build, I don't know, a car, right? You can build, I don't know, what's a popular Maruti, for example. You can build a Maruti or you can build a Ferrari, right? Now, both cars have the same science underlying it. They both have to obey the laws of mechanics, laws of chemistry, laws of thermodynamics, everything. Both cars have to obey the same laws. It's like, right? But their design is so different that the output is optimized in very different ways. Okay? It's the same with learning. Now, at the heart of learning are these four basic mechanisms, the four A's. They are there in direct instruction too. A child cannot process anything without activating something by himself. There is an awareness of a gap because I'm here learning something new. There is different levels of motivation, engagement. So affect is also there, and the teacher is giving some assembly. So the same mechanisms are there. But the design is very different from productive failure, which invokes the same set of mechanisms in very different ways. That's the power of design. And that's what teachers can do. So if you learn how to design, you can optimize learning in very powerful ways. And that's the chapter that focuses on the design.
Okay, so yeah, on a lighter note, you just mentioned Ferrari. So when I was writing my reflection for a Happy Teachers blog, so we have a blog where we share our reflections.
Yes,
So when
yes.
I checked your book online, it looks orange, but the
Hmm.
hard copy is red. So Sandeep sir corrected me. I mentioned orange, but Sandeep sir corrected me. No, it's red, not orange. So just you mentioned Ferrari. So, can I ask you one question on that? Why the color of your book is red? Is there any story behind it?
No, no. Unfortunately, no. We go through the editors, the editorial team produces lots of covers and designs. And in the end, you just ask your friends and family, hey, what would you go with? And da 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 da. And then in the end, red. It was also, well, maybe there was one additional reason for red or something brighter because, which I did not know as an author, but, editorial teams, marketing teams say, well, this is going to be shown in thumbnails on web pages and also on others. And so it will, strike out a little bit more. So I said, yeah, let's just go with red. So
So when I asked Sandeep sir this question, why the color is red, he said because he is mentioning Ferrari again and again in his book. That's why the color of the
that's a
book
good
is
one. Can I use that?
red. Yes. So, another question from a teacher, Jyoti Singh from Sunbeam Sarnath. She's asking, could you share a moment, though you have explained all these things in your book, but there are some educators who haven't read the book, especially from our masterclass 2026, they are also here. So Jyoti is asking, could you share a moment from your teaching or research when students initially struggled, but that struggle later helped them understand the concept much more deeply?
Yeah. So look, my students are mostly PhD students, right? And to investigate any hypothesis, you have to design experiments. And the logic of experiments always is, again, as I explained in the book, you want to keep everything constant except for the thing you want to see the effect of, right? And the idea is so simple. Just keep everything constant except the thing that you want to manipulate and see the effect of. But it's incredibly hard to design in complex situations. And it's very normal for PhD students to struggle for about a year before they get their design. They go through multiple design cycles. They design this way, and then we have a meeting to discuss, okay, is this design all right? And there's almost always some flaws in it, some confounds, some methodological issues, and so on and so forth. So, and they take it back and then they redesign it and they come back and again, similar, some other sets, you solve the problem in one way and you think you've solved for that, but then you've created a new problem somewhere else, because of the complexity. So as a scientist, you are living, I can tell you, I live with failure all the time. The actual success that you see that gets reported in a paper completely hides the complexity of failure, the path of failure that leads to that. Right? And so people think, oh, this was already the first step. This is how you guys are so brilliant that you got this like that. No, this took a year for us to think about and iterate through. And the experience is all about failure and just going through that. So, um, and maybe that's what we should do with our kids a bit more. Show them the the path behind that leads to that excellence or lead to that output, and not just say the output. I think students see the output so much and they say, oh, that's a one too far away, but also to say, well, I'm not clearly not like them because they could do the output in the first step, which is not true.
Yes. So we always see the success, but we don't see the journey behind
The
it.
journey behind it, yes.
So other teachers have asked a question, but we want to acknowledge their names, but you have already touched upon these questions like Prachi Pandey from Sunbeam School, Indranagar. She's asking about AI. So AI we have already
Yeah.
covered. Thank you,
Mhm.
Prachi, for sharing the question with us. Then Kajal Tiwari from Sunbeam School, Sarnath. She's asking how young learners often get discouraged quickly when they struggle, and how can teachers design? I think this also you have already covered, like
But
designing.
maybe here I can add something.
Yes,
Actually, it's not in the young learners. You know, the steepest learning curves of our lives are in the preschool years. And then the shallowest learning curves of our lives are in the schooling years. And so
yes.
it's not the learner that has a problem, it's the schooling that's the problem. And so if you see how a learner learns basic capabilities of, words and language, learning how to get up, how to walk, how to develop motor skills, they are not afraid of failure at all. So I would never say can't tackle, young learners cannot tackle failure or struggle. We are built like that. And this is also, you can take it as a positive message as well. We are built to learn through productive failure, naturally, evolutionarily. Schooling beats it out of us. And now if you bring the power of design back into schooling, that's when you want to start accelerate the learning again.
And as we grow older, we become very conscious, very
Yeah,
conscious. Maybe we are living in that kind of society that people are making us conscious.
it is a socialization. Yes, it is. We are not built. We don't. It's not like we don't have or we no longer have the capability for it. It's like we've socialized into something that is not so good or so productive.
So Kanishka Roy Chaudhary from Sunbeam School, she's asking, though we have covered this, how can teachers ensure that students don't feel motivated? So I think same question she's asking. And thank you, Kanishka, for sharing this question. And then Swati Tripathi from Sunbeam Grameen School. She's also talking about Jugaad. That does Jugaad arise because people first fail with conventional methods? Or does failure push us to think creatively? And is that how Jugaad is born?
You know how Jugaad is?
How Jugaad is born?
No, not how Jugaad is born. Jugaad is a capability that's evolved because of the uncertainty and complexity of the environment in which you are.
Yeah.
The greater the uncertainty or chaos in the environment, if you want to evolve and survive, you have to become flexible. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And by definition, when you're in that zone, you don't have all the resources to be able to solve the problem efficiently or effectively. So what you have to do is to bootstrap, come up with a situational improvisation to just make it work. It's not the most beautiful solution, it's not the most effective solution, but somehow in that instance, for that moment, it works. That is Jugaad. What productive failure does is it gives it a methodology to
And for
design.
that, yeah, we have to be very flexible. If we have fixated mind, then like it will not work. The productive failure will not work. For that, like flexibility is required.
Yeah, but
Now,
my point is, it's the environment that drives it.
environment, yeah.
The
Mm.
same Indian, say, if I'm in India, if I'm in a school in India where uncertainty is not tolerated, I will not develop flexibility in the schooling context. But when I'm back home and the electricity is out and I need water or something, I will make some jugaad to figure something out. It's the same person.
Yeah.
But I'd behave in one situation, I'm behaving in very flexible, inventive ways. And another, I'm completely straitjacketed. Again, it's not me who's not capable of flexibility. It's the environment that drives it. We need to change the environment in the school.
Yes. So now we are running out of time. It's almost 6:30. So, sir, if there is any one message you hope all educators, like we are 32 here, you want us to carry with us today, what would it be?
I think it's something that I've mentioned that failure is ingrained in us, as I said earlier. We get socialized in the wrong ways. So we need to relearn how to fail. Otherwise, we will fail to learn.
So, Sandeep sir, shall we ask any teacher to ask questions or shall we wind up the session?
We just had one little girl who asked a question, and there's a small message in the chat. So Khushi is the youngest person in the show. She asked, she had a hand up and she got tired. So I think let's give her a chance. We have a student here who's turned up from a school. So Khushi is from the Lotus Petal Foundation. If she's still there, please help her lower her hand because she held her hand up too low.
Yeah, Khushi is here. Yes, Khushi, over to you.
Yes, ma'am. Hi,
I
good
think
evening, sir.
she's in grade 8, sir.
Yeah, she's in grade 8 at Lotus Petal Foundation, Gurugram.
Yeah, grade 8, yeah.
Hi, good evening, sir. I'm
Good evening.
Khushi. It's, so incredible to meet you and getting to know about you and your book in real life, all live right now. So I just have two questions from you that you may answer. So may I?
Yes, shoot.
So, as you've been professor at many great places that I've researched and earned a doctorate, of course. So, I'd be so grateful if you would tell me some tips and just for my academics,
Yeah.
so I can do some excellent work in the school and classes.
I think the tip, first of all, as an eighth grader, the fact that you're in this conversation is already speaking high volumes of your curiosity and dedication to learning new things. I would say just amp that, work with that, be curious, try to learn things deeply, try to resist the socialization you're probably getting in your schools, and work with like-minded communities like the one you're in here. I don't think you need to figure out what you want to do so early in life. But yeah, you need to be hungry for learning. And as long as you do that, you will find a pathway.
Okay, sir. So, my next question is, how can I, as a student, reader, and a learner, use productive failure in a right manner so that it benefits my life and my learning?
Great question, Kushi. And that's the reason I wrote the last chapter of this book. I don't know if you've had a chance to have a go at it, but if you grab that, I mean, we don't have time to go into all of that. This is a whole chapter. But if you grab that chapter is how it's titled exactly. The question is, how do I design productive failure for myself? So I encourage you to read that chapter.
Okay, sure, sir. And thank you so much for answering my questions.
Thank you for the questions and for joining us.
I think Shalini ma'am has raised her hand.
There's a note in
Shalini.
the chat. There's a note in the chat. You can read.
Okay. I'll read it out.
Good evening, everyone. So, as Gurdeep has said, we are running out of time. So, this is the last question. I think it would sum up the entire session. So, sir, Dr. Manu, what question about failure are you tired of answering? And which question has never been asked, but you wish someone would ask?
No, look, Shalini, great. That's not the last question. Those are the last two questions. Huh? Very, very clever. Okay. No, look, I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I think I've got a really good sense of all the different kinds of questions that have come at it. Some are more important than others that I feel. If I can put it that way. So the question of how we treat constructs as individual properties and not as interactions of the design. That's a very important conceptual shift people need to make. How failure is not one thing, but many, and you need to really target the right kind of failure and avoid the other kind of failure. So again, there are some questions that are really, really important that people understand. Otherwise, we just have a very general conversation about failure. Now, what are the things that, and where we're advancing the work is, productive failure is mostly about just concept learning. So you build intuitions through failure-based problem solving. We are now working on embodiment. So the idea that you're not just learning with your mind, you're also learning with your body. So, and especially if you can help children to move in particular ways that help them build intuitions about something they're going to learn. Right. So again, the science is speeding up like anything. It always is in a mode where you're discovering new things. So, and it tells us new things about failure as we try to sort of couple both concept learning and motor learning. So the path ahead there's plenty of work for everybody to do.
Thank you.
So now it's 6:35, and thank you so much, Professor Manu Kapur, for your time and depth of insight. Your ideas have given us clarity and courage to rethink our classrooms. And we wish you all the best for your India visit. And we are looking forward to India edition of Productive Failure. That last chapter, Jugaad, I want to read.
Yes, and let me know how you feel about it, because it also helped me connect back with the country where I was born. So that was a very nice. It was a very nice experience writing that chapter, I have to say. I enjoyed it very much. So thank you. But more formally, thank you, Gurdeep, for moderating this session and moderating it so well. And again, thanks to everybody who came here. And thanks, Sandeep, for ideating and making this happen. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, all the educators, for joining, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.